Anybody in here?
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I now call to order our continued council meeting from September 18th. Good to see everybody here tonight. We've got a certain order of events based on how the meeting ended last month. This is the first time the full council's gathered in these chambers since we've had a lot on our minds, obviously, with the passing of Clarence Simpson, our supervisor, and also with obviously the events in Las Vegas. It's still numbing what's going on, but I know everybody's got a full plate, so we'll get right into our agenda. Our first item at my request was to continue the discussion on the request from Jerome and Tammy Knight of 3rd Street. They had a home project where it was weatherized by a grant a couple years ago, 3 years ago, and the ceiling collapsed. That damage has been repaired, but the Knights have asked for reimbursement or $1,500. Mr. Van Orbeck, you have the latest on that. I believe we had an inspection report of the Knight's house. It's in the packet as well, members of council.
We included in your packet two items. One was the original response that I think we gave out previously in regard to VML, our insurance carrier's response to the claim from the Knights. As a result of our last discussions, our building official, the county building official, and Earl Howerton, I think Yvonne, made an appointment, and on September 21st, the town of Blackstone requested an inspection of the property on 706 3rd Street, and they have the building official's response there, if you have any questions. And I think the Knights are in the back row.
And the gist of the brief letter from the county building inspector basically is he does not know what caused the ceiling collapse, but he did notice some things that were done that are not up to code. Is that correct?
Previously, not that the town did, but
Right.
existing conditions in the structure.
Did the contractor for the town do that, or did persons unknown do that?
Persons unknown, that was previous to the
Okay.
the town doing the work. We did insulation, HVAC, and some
Okay.
other stuff.
There was,
Jesse also has reviewed the contract between the town,
okay.
and we have that with you, and Jesse's available to comment on the contract if you have any.
So, Mr. Hammond, did you have a point?
I have a question about that. How long was this insulation in there before the ceiling fell?
I think, I say 3 or 4 years, but Tammy and Jerome can tell you exactly when the work was done.
About 3 years ago.
The contract was signed in October of 2013, so the work was done at some point thereafter.
Okay.
So 13, 14?
Okay.
Did it ever get wet?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, there's not any indication, and we do have a report from the insurance adjuster who was representing the insurance company that James, your father, who owns the house, had homeowner's insurance on it. And the adjuster came down and said he didn't have any indication there was any leak or any water on the insulation or the ceiling.
Members of council, we had considerable discussion at the committee level and again at the last council meeting. Does anybody have any strong feelings? And I'll ask the Knights if anything you care to say at this time. I think you stated your case fairly well at the last meeting, but
Yes, I just want to add one thing. I just say about you.
I prefer you come to the microphone. Tonight we have no public hearings, but we're always glad to hear from the people, so
Okay.
we're very flexible in that regard.
Once again, I'd like to say good evening to each and every last one of you, the council. Thank you for allowing us to plead our case to y'all. That's one question I had for the town. If as a contractor, he went up my ceiling and saw anything wasn't up to code, as a contractor hired by the town, shouldn't he have brought it up to code before putting anything else in there, or just throw it in there and keep going? That's the question. Now, I mean, that's the thing. That's the point I want to make. As a contractor, bonded and hired by the town, if anything he found that wasn't up to code, he should have brought it up to code before putting in the installation, or brought it to our attention instead of just putting it in there, right around. That's the only thing I need to say.
And to that end, along those same lines, the work that was done as part of the Church Street Improvement Project, was that not inspected by the county building inspector?
Yeah, but I doubt they go in and actually inspect the sheetrock that was already there.
And
They inspected the work that was being done currently.
Good point.
What was on the building permit? Installation.
He inspects that work that is permitted. Very good, okay.
yeah, and just like one more thing, as like when the inspectors came out there, the ceiling fixtures they've put in. I mean, my wife and I are 50 years old, and the ceiling fixtures fell out of the ceiling, just hanging out. we're scared to touch them. We wanted y'all to see them before we even did anything. Just come out of the ceiling. But, you know, like I'm saying, you know, the house has been there since 1973, the ceiling hasn't fell. No damage on our part. So just once again, thank you for allowing me to plead my case.
Thank you,
all
Mr.
have a great
Knight.
evening.
Thank you.
Can we ask our attorney, this would set a precedence, don't you feel like, if we were to just replace someone's contents of a home when it was obviously shown that it was not, I guess it's not the town, but DHCD or whoever it be.
There is a contract that was entered into on this specific project between the homeowners, between the town, and between the contractor in this case. What I noticed in the contract is, it is the contractor's obligation to the owners to perform the work in a workmanlike quality, not the town's. And so, if anyone would be responsible for failing to perform the work in a workmanlike quality, then that is the contractor, not the town. Another thing to point out is that in the contract as well, and this is under contractor responsibilities, under D, it says that the contractor indemnifies and holds harmless the owner and the town from any, and assumes all liability and responsibility for injuries and claims for suits and damages arising out of the work performed by the contractor hereunder as a result of contractor's performance of the same. And so number one, the contractor is the one, you know, that has that contractual obligation, but then it even goes a step further to say that if the town were to be on the hook for any reason, that the contractor actually has assumed the town's liability for that as well.
But that would require, just in the reality of it is what you're saying, and I think it makes perfect sense, is that the Knights, their recourse would be against the contractor. In this case, I believe it was a Davis company or somebody like that. That's who they would have to, and the reality of it is, because it's 3 years ago, and we also know that the building inspector said, our county official says he does not know what caused the ceiling collapse, they would likely be unsuccessful in their quest for reimbursement. However, I can certainly see the point of it was a town project, and I think they appreciate the town project, they've said that. I believe basically, Attorney Bacon, it's more or less right now a policy question for the council.
Correct, because pursuant to the contract, the town does not have liability.
It's council's pleasure. Mr. Nash has raised a concern about precedent, which is certainly a bona fide one. I see Mr. Moncure, and then I recognize Thomas Taylor. Mr. Moncure, go ahead.
First, let me lead off by saying I am extremely sympathetic in this case to the people who are suffered loss. But after listening to everything that I've heard, I cannot see where the town bears a liability. I can see where the previous contractor might. Now, depending on what we decide here tonight, whether we let sympathy get in the way or whether we judge completely objectively, I'd like to point out that what we decide tonight will affect any future West End, East End, North End, any projects that we do to help people to restore, including the ones that are going on right now. And does this mean that we, if we do, will we not be agreeing to reinsure and be the fallback for any and all problems that happen now on work that's done in the past and or work that may be done in the future? I just think that I can't see the town being responsible for this, because I cannot see, in reading everything I've read, listening to our attorney and talking endless hours over, and Philip and I've talked over this a lot, just conversation.
Right.
I can see where the town's involved because we were the conduit,
That's correct.
but we were only a conduit. We weren't a supplier, we weren't a worker. We only were the conduit for the money. It came to us, through us, and on to somebody else.
Okay.
And for that reason, I'd like to get the council here to be thinking, not the way I think necessarily, but to be looking at these items and making a decision of whatever is made.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Moncur. Before I get back to more council discussion, Mr. Thomas Taylor had a point.
I know my train thought, but I get it.
Okay, all right.
I get it. Look at this for y'all and the town manager. I get my house work done with y'all approval on the Columbus Day. Am I gonna go through this issue with this roof sealing in or falling in or all that?
I can't answer that. We certainly hope not. This is the only occasion that I'm aware of, and the town, I will say to its credit, since 1992, has renovated probably half the neighborhoods in Blackstone.
Well, my house been there since '57. So, I ain't gonna cause no problem if the roof fall down, yada, yada, yada.
We'll make sure we have
I'm not gonna cause no problem. Because my daddy left me good, I can take care of it. I just want to make sure we don't have no issues. But I don't want the work done. Y'all approved it 7-0. I don't want no issues.
Mr. Norbeck, I think your concerns are duly noted.
Town manager, can you help me on this?
Can I help you on?
Yeah.
The existing condition of your home.
No, don't worry about that. I handle that. But there's no issue about the contract.
If there's any positive that comes out of this, folks, is that there are extra eyes and ears now in everybody's work. So that while this is unfortunate this has happened, I think probably other contractors that do grant work are going to probably realize, hey, let's don't be the one that had a ceiling collapse.
Town manager, you gonna have any problem?
I don't foresee
If
any
not,
problem.
I'm going to you, Eric.
But,
Move on.
Madam
Town
President,
manager.
Madam President,
have, the contractor, he declined to take care of this problem?
I don't think he's been formally asked. He was here at one of our last management team meetings. He's aware of what's going on. And he may have gone over to the house. I don't know if he did not. There you go. But he's aware that there's an issue, but he has not been approached for anything on reimbursement or compensation.
I see Mr. Lewis Johnson. Yes, sir.
At the town, but the NISTOM, they did not hire this contractor at all. So therefore, if they didn't hire these people, they wouldn't have had this work done. Possibility that roof was still up there. So at the town, the contract went through the town in a sense. The town, y'all selected this contract.
But the owner of the home was not forced to do this. The owner of the home, I believe, I'm no lawyer, but the owner of the home chose to participate in the project. Would that be correct?
The owner of the home contracted with Superior Builders for the work. James and Patsy Knight executed the contract.
We all understand that part, but it's a tragedy that happens, so why can't the town go at the contract with them?
See, you paid the contract, we have no recourse of getting money back because we didn't pay him. The town paid him.
That
So we
Why
cannot
can't
sue
the
the
town go
contract.
after the
We
contract?
can't sue him because the town, you all paid him.
That's not true. James and Patsy Knight signed the contract, and if we need to, as a town, pursue it with Davis Construction or Superior Builders, we can certainly do that, because the contract was executed by the owner, the contractor, and the town of Blackstone.
But with the statement that was given to us last week from the building official at Nottoway
Lewis.
County, says that it was not from the workmanship of that contract, correct?
Whether or not it would be upheld, or he would agree to pay, or whatever, that would be up to him, but I do think that the contractor was hired by Patsy and James Knight, who are, I think, Jerome's parents, and the town of Blackstone, and Superior Builders, all three.
hold on. I want to recognize, Councilman Green has a question, then I'm going to recognize Michael Bagley. We're going to get to everybody. I promise we're going to get to everybody tonight. Mr. Green.
Just so I make sure I'm following, the homeowner signed a contract to have this done and held the town harmless. Is that what you said?
There is an indemnity clause in here where the contractor actually holds the town harmless.
Okay.
And that's in the contractor responsibilities section D.
We're not telling you not to do it. I think what we're trying to do is give you the best data so you can make a decision. Is it a decision for the council to
Yes.
make based on the pleas? And we all get that, and that's why we're kind of standing to the side. But so you know that the contract was paid. Who paid them? It wasn't the town of Blackstone. The Department of Housing and Community Development gave us grant money, and we in turn cut a check to the contractor. We didn't actually pay them.
Whose name was on the check that went to the contractor?
It should be Superior Builders.
But I mean, no, the payer, was it the town of Blackstone? See, that's what the state, that's what the state does, just like all these grants. When they come in and give all these grants, they say, you know, it's their state grants, but the state's smart. They give it to the county, and they get the big photo op, but the check always says, Nottaway County to EBCI. So the state can say, that's y'all's baby, now we're done. They're clever. But the check, the contractor was paid when he went to the bank.
You and I signed the check.
What's that?
You and I probably.
The mayor and the town manager's signatures on the check. So, Mr. Michael Bagley, real quick, I'm sorry.
Good evening, council and citizens. My thing is, this family has been punished well long enough. How come the town and the town lawyer represent them and sue the individual company that did the work? The town need to represent those people because the town did the work. So you need to sue that company and solve the family problem.
How about this? And again, I don't go to all the committee meetings on purpose because I have deference to the council. How about instead of suing, could we ask first? Could we ask? I mean, could council ask? I admit, and Mr. Nash made a good point, certainly, and I don't want to use hyperbole, but the word chilling effect, it would mean basically every time anyone had grant work done, well, you know, I'll tell you what, they left a lot of dust in the den. I mean, I'm not saying anybody here would do that, but it could go on and on. And certainly what the Knights had was no more, it was not dust, it was a ceiling collapse, and thank goodness no one was hurt. Could we?
I have another fear that if this is the case, then the town or future councils may shy away
From the grant project.
from doing grant projects because of the reciprocity of us doing so.
Right.
And that is a fear. That is a fear here.
Each one of those contractors, they are insured when they come to do a project,
They're
right?
bonded.
Each what?
They are insured when they come do a project,
Yeah,
right?
Not to prolong this, because I know the Knights, y'all been very patient. Can we ask and say, look, you know, we'd like you to maybe do other work in the future. Everybody makes a mistake. We had a ceiling collapse, but these folks, you know, can we maybe find some common ground? It may not be $1,500. They may say, well, how about 11 or 1,200 or. But we can sue is such a, and I certainly sue is optional, but it's the last resort. That's warfare. I don't like warfare unless I know I can win.
Did we spend $1,500 before Bill Knight because we made a mistake on the sidewalk before?
But let's try to look forward. Let's look forward. Let's try to. And of course, council can make the motions, but I would recommend. Can we just maybe ask?
I agree.
Maybe do this peacefully. All right. All right. Can we?
Is there a time frame you're going to ask them?
My next question was, can we ask in a timely manner?
I'll ask and get you a response by the 16th of October unless.
We'll have an answer by the October 16th council meeting, 1 week from this coming Monday. Thank y'all all on this issue. The next issue I asked to be put on the agenda, as many of y'all may or may not know, the state, in an effort to prevent a Petersburg-type financial collapse, has gone around, extracted data from localities, and given us a financial rating score. A score of 16 or below is considered warning. 5 or below is look out, you're going to be a Petersburg. We scored 29, and I wanted the town manager and his staff to be able to explain to this full council and y'all what that means. Are we, and does it mean we can maybe take on water line, sewer line, armory, that type of thing? Are we perilously close to being a Petersburg? I don't think we are, but I wanted to hear from the people who know far more about it than I do.
Here's a list, and I can provide it as public information for anybody who may have a question. We received from Virginia Municipal League. We did not receive those scores for each county, but we do have the scores for each town and each city in the state of Virginia. And in the town category, which we fall, we're a 29.1. And there are other places like South Hill, which is at a 95. There are other places that are far below us, such as Pulaski, that has an 18. You may say, why are they more in distress than we are? You'd have to look at each individual case and put it through the matrix in which the state has provided us. And the majority of those matrices, I guess, the majority of those are based on how much cash do you have in the bank. If you go back and look at the matrix, and it says oftentimes unrestricted reserves, unrestricted reserves, and that is what we've been talking about since 2011, when the town had 0 unrestricted reserve, okay? 0, not less than 0, 0. And at the end of the day, that has been one of our targets that we've been trying to set cash aside, so that we're a 29 now. I can tell you, we were, and City of Petersburg is a 4, okay? We were a 4 before because we had no money.
Explain the true number of what that 29 is, though. You explained to us.
The 29, if you look at our audit, and it's based on the CAFR, those who do audits and accounting understand, all towns and communities in excess of 3,500 population in the state of Virginia are required to submit their annual audit to the Auditor of Public Accounts for just such a purpose. Anything under 3,500, Mayor asked why Cambridge and Victoria weren't on the list because they're under 3,500 population. We fall into the over 3,500 population, and the 29 is based on the audit figures. Our auditor provides us a response on the data on a snapshot as of July 1. Taking into account also any accruals that take place during the course of the July and August, and they take what is our reserve fund, and that's the snapshot. Our true unrestricted reserves are actually a little less than the account that we keep them in, because we keep other things like our VDOT line items, we keep bus money, we keep different things in that account. I have a copy of the spreadsheet if anybody would like to look at it. It was based on unrestricted reserves in our audit of about $2.2 million. The true figure today is about $1,675,000. That is the actual, complete, true, unrestricted figure that I can point to you that is absolutely gospel.
So our score is truly what number?
Truly, we should be, if they use 1.6, we would be even lower, because our fixed liabilities, our debt service are all the same. So I'll be honest with you, if we use the truly unreserved figure, we would be about a 20, I would think, okay?
So we're still not dire, but...
We're not dire. When you hit a 15 is when you get the poopy letter from the state auditor of accounts that says you better start behaving yourself, okay?
The average, just so you know, I went and did the math, the average among towns, and of course they vary in population, but the average is right around 50. And the closest ones to us, Fawn was 36, and South Hill is a very impressive 95.
And I have heard, I have not seen, that Nottoway County has a very high score.
95.
95. And I think that's in part because they have very little debt, and they got a bunch of money in the bank as a result of, I think, selling property to Fast C and those kinds of things that have really enhanced the amount of cash they've got, and they've really got a limited amount of debt. Our debt primarily is water and sewer debt, okay? And of that debt, primarily is the water treatment plant. If you remember, the town took over the water treatment plant, and we refinanced that bond in 14. We still have about $5 million principal amount on that bond, and that's really the biggest chunk of our debt. We have 2 items that will be coming off in 2019, one in August, which is about $55,000 a year, which is a 0% loan that we have through the Virginia Resource Authority that will be coming off the books, and we have the medical center, which is a $22,000 a month payment that'll be coming off the books. That's pretty much covered by their lease payment, which is about $22,000. There's very little difference between the two.
But that still counts as our, even though Bond Secure has basically been paying it for us, that's town debt.
That is town debt. That's factored in as town debt, and we still owe, an appreciable amount on that.
Any members of council have any questions? This is the non-glamorous stuff. This is the stuff that no one sees improved. You don't ride by and look at the money in the bank. It's your money. But this is, and I got to give full props, even though we have locked horns at times, town manager, the town finance committee, and we still lock horns, might lock horns tonight. But we have come a long way, and it has not been easy. And there's no need to spike the football in the end zone yet, but we're all happier coaches, I think.
And so you know, Paul Lee hasn't given me the exact figure what we need to be at 50, but clearly we need to either pay off some debt or we got to put some more cash in the bank. Those are really the 2 predominant factors that we see here. Our finance plan that was adopted by council, I don't know, a year or 2 ago that we wrote up, came up and was recommended by Roland Cooch to actually be a little larger. If you remember, the guy from Davenport thought our water and sewer reserve should be higher. It's $3.2 million, so you're literally halfway to what we had established as our target. Okay.
We started somewhere, though. So.
Absolutely.
We may indeed come back and say that number needs to be higher to have a score that's adequate to what council's pleasure is.
And just to, at least from my standpoint, while I'm competitive, I don't think our goal should be, we want to be the highest score. We just want to make sure that we are able to fund those things which need to be funded on a short-term basis, but also have the reserves and the foresight, so when a street caves in or power line or a water line breaks, we can handle the emergencies. 'Cause it used to be, if we had an emergency, we had to go to the bank and get a line of credit and all kinds of good stuff. Any other questions, members of council? All right, that is item 2 on this special meeting. Next is meals tax. Mr. Norbeck and Ms. Hardy. This is,
I don't know if you want to do this one, then they'll keep the background. I think there's a motion that was adopted by the Finance Committee at our last Finance Committee meeting, included in your packet, and that came out of the last Finance Committee in regards to a meals tax audit that's ongoing that Jennifer Hardy has been handling for the town. I have the list of folks here, and I think Juanita told us there were 27 paying meals tax establishments. Of that number, and Jennifer, jump in if you.
Is that as of 2016, December, right?
I think the spreadsheet that I have before me is January 16 to December 16, so for calendar year 16. And of those numbers, we've gotten responses from everybody. Okay, some worked out to the penny, some did not, and for those that did not, there were apparently 5. We had 2 that didn't respond at all, and we went back and spoke with those folks, and we've got 1 response, and then a second response that probably needs some documentation to support it. So at this point, there are 5 that have responded, but we still have some questions in regards to providing documentation to separate. I think all the explanations are pretty reasonable. I think there's just a question of what percentage is actually subject to meals tax and what portion of your reported gross is not subject to meals tax. And I think we need some, and have requested some additional documentation on 5 establishments.
We had discussed it at County Finance meeting. It wasn't, we had 2, and that was what our main discussion was, that it wasn't fair to those that had responded, that we had 2 that had not even responded within, how long of a period of time? It was.
starting July.
Started May.
May?
Yeah, there were
May.
2.
But those 2 have responded.
They have now? Okay, so that's news to us.
And one of those, I think we still need some documentation, and Jennifer told me today that he had spoken to her, and she needs some additional paperwork just to understand.
So this in our packet with the county finance is a recommendation, which could be a motion tonight for the full council, that all merchants need to submit proper documentation within 15 days, or council will proceed with legal action. Is that right?
I think that was the motion that came out of the committee.
Came
I
out
think it
of
was.
committee 3-0. So moved.
Okay. Mr. Green has moved that the 5 restaurants need to comply with the request within 15 days of today. What date would that be, just for the record? That would be October the,
Let's make it the 4th.
so it'd be October the 19th. Okay, or council will proceed with legal action. Just what is legal action? Because in the past, legal action, that is,
I'm going to refer to the legal action expert.
what is legal action? Is that a letter from the town attorney, or is that going to the courthouse? What is legal action?
That would be up to the town's discretion. Legal action could be anything from a letter from me up to, going to the courthouse for civil action. It could be going to the courthouse for criminal action if, that is.
I don't think criminal action is necessary, being that this is our first year. A lot of it is probably, like Philip said, simple fact that this is the first year doing it. It's a lot of irons. We have to iron a lot of things out, and it could just be.
What is subject to meals tax?
I would prefer that council specify clearly in the motion so there is no ambiguity on this matter.
Well, let's make something perfectly clear. The penalties are Class 1 misdemeanors, which could carry a fine of $10,000 or 1 year in jail. We're not talking about a speeding ticket. So the penalties that are fairly severe. So I agree with you, Mayor. We should have some discussion. We should give the staff, through the guidance of the attorney, clear, concise direction to go from here.
Okay.
I recommend that we give them 15 days to comply, and then that we proceed with with the legal action, which is they're in violation of a Class 1 misdemeanor.
That would be a charge.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to Mr. Green's motion? Mr. Monk, is that a second or a question?
Second.
A silent second, okay. Mr. Monk, you're a second. Any further discussion? Who votes first tonight? I believe it's Mr. Scott's night.
Okay, September should have been Mr. Hammer, so October, leave.
If there's no further discussion by members of council, I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Scott.
Aye.
The motion carries 7-0. Thank you, members of council. Next item is the Armory. And before, I see a lot of Armory friendly faces here, people concerned. I do want council to entertain the recommendation, which is nothing sweeping, from what I understand, nothing dramatic, but I certainly want to hear from those who want to speak. But is there a recommendation from the Buildings and Properties Committee on the Armory? I've been told there was.
That or finance, either one.
Okay.
Both committees discussed it under my chairmanship. We would like to do a door-to-door survey, to explain to the public what's involved with the town taking on refurbishing and restoring the Armory. Receive that data, report to council, and have a public hearing before we undertake the possibility of $25,000 a month in debt service for 10 years is what we're looking at, is the rough numbers. So
Okay.
I think before I'm prepared to make a decision like that, I would like the input from the citizens that don't want to come to a public hearing. They can do it through a survey. They can call and speak to the manager or one of the 8 of us, and we can also have a public hearing. That, I would like to get as much input as possible before council takes on a decision of that magnitude.
Only question I have, and I was not at the committee, and I've not even watched the video, I'm ashamed to say, because I love the videos. Have we decided the door-to-door survey, okay, just to make sure, this would be every residence in Blackstone,
I think it's door to door, and I think there was actually discussion about making it electronic as well.
online as well,
They-
okay,
Yeah, I think the committee did not want to do it online.
okay.
They wanted to actually have a responsive, like voting in the MLB All-Star game.
You can keep voting, keep voting. The wording, again, not trying to nitpick, but I think we all know, whatever side of the aisle we're on, you can sway a survey, certainly. I think most folks in Blackstone who've lived here more than 5 years know that the Armory's been an issue, but I think the wording would be somewhat key, and I would like to see maybe if you could consult with, not that the Armory,
No, I would like you to assign it to one of the committees. We meet with the Armory Committee, and we have a survey for council's approval on the 16th.
would it just be a one-question survey?
No.
Okay.
Heavens no. Be
Okay.
facts, figures.
I disagree with the figures because we don't know figures. So I don't think you can go on there and say with $25,000 a month added because we don't know them. And I think we discussed
So
this.
what would you survey?
You're surveying whether they want a community center and whether they're. You can't mention figures. I don't think it's possible. I mean, I really don't.
Do you mention the Armory? Do you specifically say, do you
Well, I
want a
think-
community center? I think it's gonna be a popular response. Do you
Yeah.
want the Armory? I think it's gonna be.
Well,
You got to mention Armory. That'd be like saying,
Yeah.
not naming who you want to be the quarterback of the All-Star team. I mean, we're here. The people are here tonight. The people I see mostly, that they're here because of that 1936 landmark on High Street.
Well, I don't want to banter with you, Mr. Nash, but if I was to go look at a boat or automobile or a shotgun or whatever, I wouldn't go to look at it if I didn't know what it cost.
Well, I'd agree if it was the accurate figure, but $25,000 inflated. It is no. I don't think it's anywhere near it. I think it's well over.
You think it's more than that?
No, I think the true figure is well less than that
Okay.
per month. And that's why
But what is your figure?
no one knows.
Well,
No one ever knows.
we heard testimony from the Armory's architect, and he gave us numbers. And what his testimony was is that if we did it with historical tax credits, it would be a $1.8 million project. If we did it on our own, it would be a $1.8 million project. And a simple amortization schedule at 4% is $25,000 a year.
Then
$25,000 a
same
month.
meeting
So,
last month, we heard 1.2 million. So I mean, $600,000 is a big difference in debt service.
If I was going to go to committee on this, and the only thing, and like I said, the Armory might be one of those issues. I've always been kind of old school where we get elected and we do that research, and if we make a bad decision, we get voted out. The Armory might be something that's worth a survey because it's been, in the year 2000 was the estimate of $118,000 to tear it down. I've been to most of the meetings about the Armory till recently. I do think I would refer it to the Health and Ordinance Committee just because they normally deal with wording on the wording of the survey. And I might even engage, I think it'd be a good faith gesture if maybe one or two officials of the Army group maybe were consulted, not that they get veto power or get to have say over how that survey's worded. I think it'd be a nice gesture, but, you know, my informal, here, I'm just gonna tell you what I think, and, you know, of course, I'm famous for doing that. I think right now in Blackstone, and I'll get booed out of here for this, because y'all know where I stand. I am not getting the feedback from people on fire about the Armory as far as don't do anything or do anything. I think it's become one of those old issues where everyone's kind of got numb to it. It's like low interest rates at the bank. A lot of folks right now don't realize that interest rates are ticking up, but no one's moving their money, a lot of people, because they're numb. They're just used to the interest rates are so low. You know, we talk about that at the bank sometimes. So, but a survey might educate us about our community, and more input's always a good thing. So I'm inclined to, if a motion's passed tonight about the survey, and I'm gonna recognize some people to go forward with the health and ordinance and have it done. When you say door to door now, we're talking about go out with the light bills.
No, that was a light bill. We're gonna go door to door.
And give
Like we do with water
Okay.
notifications or something. If
all right.
there's
We can do that. We certainly can do that. I was told there was gonna be a 3-minute projector show. Was I told correctly?
Yes.
All right.
Can we make?
35 seconds.
I make a motion that the Health and Ordinance Committee take up with
Town staff.
with town staff and a select few Armory committee members and draft up a study.
But I would like also for the final survey to be approved by the council. I see. I'm gonna recognize Mr. Tom Wilkinson first. He's got the projector, and like I said, I'm gonna let everybody speak, but let's try to move us along. Do you need the lights out, or?
No, I don't think so.
Wait a minute,
Okay.
you got a motion on the floor?
Hold on, I'm sorry, Tom, Colonel Tom. We've got a motion on the floor. Is there a second to Mr. Nash's motion
Vote on it?
to have
For us
the
to keep it?
Health and Ordinance Committee craft a survey? Is there a second to Mr. Nash's motion? I apologize, it's my fault.
I'll second it.
Mr. Scott is seconding that motion. All in favor, say aye.
I offer a substitute motion for this to go back to Building Grounds.
Okay, is there a second to the substitute motion takes priority? Buildings and Grounds would be Mr. Green.
What was your reasoning behind having it for Health and Ordinance?
Just because Health and Ordinance normally deals with the way things are the words, and I think I think the County Finance and Buildings Properties has certainly discussed the Armory enough to be comfortable with what they know. I was just trying to give it a fresh set of eyes. No ulterior motive.
Mr. Mayor, because I think finances, money is such a basic increment to the final decision on the Armory, and I mean, it all boils down to that the Finance Committee is probably better equipped and more informed at this point.
Yeah, but the survey
This
is
is a
supposed to be
survey,
non-biased.
Mr. Monkey. This is a survey to gauge the pulse of the people, not how much you know about the Armory or the money.
I didn't say that. I said because they know what questions need to be asked.
That's the problem.
Let me, Mr. Monkey has the floor. Mr. Green is offering a substitute motion to have the Buildings and Properties do the survey instead of Health and Ordinance. Is a second to Mr. Green's motion.
Yes, I will second that.
Mr. Monkey, a second. So we will vote on that motion first, starting with Mr. Scott. The motion is for the committee that is Mr. Green, Mr. Hamner,
And Ms. Thompson.
and Ms. Thompson to take it versus Mr. Scott, Mr. Nash, and Mr. Hamner. So, Mr. Hamner, you're going to get it either way.
It really don't matter to me.
Aye.
We still have a vote on it.
Well, I kind of agree that maybe this thing needs a new set of eyes. So, no.
Okay, no.
No.
Motion carries 5-2. So that survey will be done by the Buildings and Properties Committee in connection with one or two representatives of the Army group. And I would ask that it be one or two, not 20, because you won't get it done.
I think I should be involved, because I'm the one that thought of the survey.
Well, and Mr. Johnson, whenever the meeting is held, certainly if y'all want to have a committee meeting, and that would be up to the chairman of the committee to recognize you, but I have no problem with that. Have no problem with that.
May I ask why it's on the floor? Can it be open to the public to speak at this meeting if required? required we sign up ahead of time?
No, there'll be no requirement to sign up.
Right.
It'll be open for them.
Has that been cleared by law since y'all already paid to have it investigated?
Mr. Green is the chair. He says he will allow comments. Mr. Wilkinson and then Mr. Johnson, do you have your hand up? Yeah. Can we go with the PowerPoint real quick and then you? Is that okay?
I had my hand up too.
I'm sorry, Ms. Manel. There've been so many hands. I just think.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Nash said, that we don't really know what the figures are. And one suggestion that was bandied about when we met with the Building and Grounds Committee recently was that we could do it in phases. So if we were to do it in phases, that dramatically reduces the cost over time. And you can't really quantify that if you don't know the time frame for your phases. You understand what I'm saying? That should be in the survey. If you want to do the armory, do you want to do it all at once? Do you want to do it in phases? You know, you need to find out which avenue people are willing to take. And I don't know if you can quantify it with figures right now.
Right. And you also have to define what a community center is, because community center for a lot of people in Blackstone is the Picket Officers Club. It's a building that's idle until you rent it and have a party. Community center for a lot of other people in Blackstone is a staffed, program-oriented for seniors, for children. So that would need to be defined, because you can go to Food Lion and say, community center, everybody raise their hands up. Then you tell them what it is. Oh, no, we can't afford that, or I don't want just that. No, you know, that's only for the people with money that can rent it. So we gotta iron all that out. Good question and good points. I want to recognize Colonel Tom Wilkinson, who it's a 3-minute.
If you don't mind, I'd like to settle this issue before we move on.
All right.
Okay, Tuesday, October 10th at 7 p.m. Is that a problem with Mr. Hamner or President Thompson?
Tuesday, October 7th at 7 p.m. That's
Okay.
6 days from now.
October 10th.
October 10th.
I'm sorry, October 10th.
I know right now.
That'll be your meeting.
Is that agreeable to you, Mr. Hamner? Any here in these chambers, is that agreeable to the crowd?
All right.
Will you make the call?
I will do it.
Thank you.
Colonel Tom. We got lights. My goodness. Powerful stuff. I don't know who chose the wording of the photos, but it cannot be better done. Thank y'all very much. That's pretty good stuff there. I did see Cindy Taylor Longest had a hand up, then Lewis. I'm sorry. I keep changing the order on you, man. I'm sorry. I've been in Richmond all day. I'm tired.
Y'all know who I am. I'm up here from a different perspective. Although I'm not active with the Armory Group anymore, I still feel as strongly as ever, but I've got a little different perspective. I grew up on Amelia Avenue, West End, till I was 13, then I moved over to East Broad Street, East End. You know, I come from a little different place. I don't go to the wine festival, I don't eat the wine and cheese. I'm not interested in a family reunion or a wedding or anything at the Armory. I see it from part of our original concept. This council has done a great job, and I thank each and every one of y'all for the recreation that y'all have brought together. Partly thanks to my own kid who got y'all at Wigglesworth when he was only 14, by the way. But it's time to move on to the education and the socialization of our kids around here. Now, none of y'all can really do anything without the 3,700 of us. And we appreciate what y'all do, but y'all have to look at the bigger picture of this Armory. Community center for our children, not just for these weekend events, but the potential it has for the learning center it can be, for the computer labs, for the things that I stood myself in front of the Nottoway School Board and got their blessing and their support for this town to have the SAT testing, for the tutoring, for the literacy. Y'all seem to have forgotten about all that. You talk about, I don't want to spend no tax money on fixing the Armory. Mr. Green, yourself, I watched you this afternoon on the computer, the meeting of September 25th, say no less than 3 times, I ride by that place, I just want to bulldoze it, it feels so bad.
I also say when I walk through it,
You
it
weep.
makes me want to
Makes you
cry.
weep,
So
yes, sir. But your children, like mine,
use the whole paragraph.
well, I didn't quote, I just said what I heard you say, but I'm sure your children, like mine, were fortunate enough to go home and be able to have internet and go on their computer and do their homework. You have no idea how many children can't do that in Blackstone.
Why have I said all along I'd love to see us move the library into a better facility and make that a computer lab?
Wouldn't that be
I've
great
said
if
that all along.
facility was the Armory? Do you know how small the library is? I mean, how often have you walked through? They have, what, 3, 4 computers they can use? There's 100 kids that can use a computer lab. You know, if they had 20 set up in the Armory at all times, wouldn't that be fabulous? There's literacy grants. Governor Bilal's wife was just at the Herb Cottage the other night with the Nottoway Literacy Group. There's money out there.
There's no
grants
cloud.
out there.
There's no anti-Armory cloud over me, so don't assume it.
I don't assume anything, sir, because you know the old adage. But what I'm saying is let's look at the total picture. When you talk about being scared of spending tax dollars, well, money is there to be spent. And if we're going to spend it on anything, let's help our youth. You know, y'all spent a lot of money for recreation, and that was great. And I love to see these children coming down in front of my house and going over there. And I love it, and I appreciate it. But I can tell you something. There's no room for a community center over there. You can forget that. I've seen many, many meetings when I've seen Mr. Van Norbeck stand up here with plans, blueprints, examples of what maybe the recreation complex could be with a community center over there.
The master plan that.
Yes, it's a master plan y'all have developed where y'all could take some of those buildings, one of the two, and turn into community center. I live in that community. There's not room for anything else over there. There's not parking. Those buildings are not fit. It would cost more and would not be as nice. It would not be in the center of our town. It would be too far for the children in Taylor Bottom to have to come all the way over here to reach, when actually the Armory sits in the center of our town. Why would you even consider a community center over here in a neighborhood that's already full, and we appreciate it with the recreation. Let's focus on these children and the other potential of the Armory, not just, let's look past the weddings, you know, if that turns you off a little bit. Yeah, I'm not crazy about putting a whole lot of money. Y'all go on out to, you know, I don't care if you have to go out to Fort Pickett for that. But think of the tutoring. Think about the literacy. How many adults in Blackstone can't read and write? Have y'all ever thought about that? You would be
25%.
shocked. You would be shocked. Think about Miss Wilson. You know, she works for the town now, but she had a lot of volunteers over there. How many of those volunteers would come to the Armory? You talk about staffing the Armory. You, Mr. Green, yourself mentioned DBI. You know, they could staff it part-time. That would put somebody centralized there that can maybe help these volunteers police. I hate to use that word, but somebody has to monitor a building when it's open. You're scared of using funds from the medical center. Well, you have these funds coming in that are not earmarked for anything else. Why not earmark it for the children of
If
these
you don't mind me
towns?
correcting you,
I don't
I'm
mind
not
that.
afraid of using the funds from Bon Secours. I'm afraid of a 10-year debt service with a 5-year lease. This is a big difference.
I understand that, but let's look at the positive. Are you afraid in investing in our children over 10 years?
No,
Let's
absolutely
invest in
not.
our children.
Absolutely not. But this
And let's
town
move
treasury
forward.
will not support making that type of payment if we did not have the Bon Secours income. So the key to it is to get a 10-year lease, but it hasn't been offered to us yet. That's my point.
That's one part, but that gives us a 5-year window. Ms. Pennell mentioned phases. Let's work on 5 years. What can we do in the Armory in these first 5 years we know we have this lease? How much can we get done? What can we get started? What can the next 5 years of youth benefit upon? And then when we get done with that, let's see what happens then. Let's see what kind of grants we can apply for. Let's see what Mr. Van Norbeck, he's a bright man, let's see what he can come up with. He's got 5 years to do it in. Let's forget about this silly, we're gonna fight over which committee it goes in because it's a dollar figure. No, let's not do that. Let's forget this petty. Let's do something for our kids. Let's do something for, excuse me, I'm not meaning to insult anybody. Let's forget the wine and cheese amongst their family reunions and their class reunions. Let's take everybody, let's take folks like me to work every day. Let's take our elderly, let's take our youth. Let's take the Kinston Forest kids. Let's take my Nottaway kids. Let's take everybody and do what this was supposed to be to start with. Everybody, this whole town.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I just have other duties to worry about.
You have to worry about
To
the
worry
bottom
about
line.
funding police, fire, water, sewer, garbage. Those are the core responsibilities that we were elected to supervise.
But if the Armory...
But I'm not anti-armory. I'm just saying that I don't subscribe to forget it all, let's do the Armory.
I'm not asking
I
you-
subscribe to find a way of doing it at the Armory and stay within the parameters of being fiscally responsible.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to be pro-Armory, but more than that, I'm asking you to be pro-Blackstone. I'm asking you to be pro the
I'm
30s.
about as pro-Blackstone as pro-Blackstone
Okay,
can
but
be.
let's get back to basics. Let's be pro the 3,700 people that you have to answer to. Let's take what we've got, let's take what we know we've got coming, and let's get started and quit batting it around.
That's why I brought it to the forefront.
And
I am
appreciate
the
that. And
one
you
that brought it to the
communicated
forefront.
with me personally, and I
Right.
really, and I've told you how much I appreciate that. But now that it's come back up again and again, we've got 5 years, a 5-year lease. Once that paper is signed,
Correct.
you're not counting on that money to pay for that street improvement on South Main right now. That's a good start. Let's get the plans, let's get it going, and put the focus back where it belongs, on something for the entire community. And quit wasting time.
Thank you, Ms. Longest. Thank you. Very good points. Mr. Johnson, you'll be third now, so I thought Mr. Taylor was going to speak.
No, that's got up.
Mr. Johnson.
He was being a gentleman.
And I didn't think, this might be a preview of a future Army meeting. That's fine. That's okay. We're glad to hear from our constituents.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The Armory. This is a tough subject, but
I disagree with some of the things Cindy was saying, because she's saying over there about the recreation field, there's no room. There's plenty of room where you tear those buildings down. There's no room going to be at the Army if you have parking. If you was to add on to that building for what the peoples want, there's no parking spaces over there. But if you tear down those buildings, which is going to happen, that will get approved, believe me. It will. You'll have more ample space. It'll be a lot more for people to do. We're hollering about the kids. We got to see what the kids want. We can't get up here and say what's best for the kids. I made a motion that if you're in the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, you was coming up and you was old enough to sit down, take a survey, and to say what you would like to have. Everybody's trying to predict what the kids want or what we should put in the Armory. We need to see what the citizens of Blackstone want in this thing. We're the ones that got to pay for this in the long run. Nobody else. No town council should be up here dictating what we're going to fix the Army. Let's see what the people, that's why I said let's do a survey.
All right.
That's the best route. Because it's just so many people that it's against the Army, it's for the Army.
It's certainly a split topic, no doubt about it. It's been a divisive issue, sadly, but you're correct.
So let's see what the people's want is. Let's stop saying, have anybody did a study to see about the training thing up there at the that little building they built up there?
You mean
the Goodwill building? They got the computer class. They got all that. Have anybody did a study to see how many people actually goes up there to that place?
I have not. It's a private.
Because they offering a lot of things that the Army gonna be offering. But you need to do a study.
Sure.
To see if this is worth this. Because I don't see too many kids up there.
Well, let me ask you this and ask the room this, and this has been discussed before. Mr. Nash actually planted the seed. I believe, but there are only certain things by law that a local governing body can hold a binding referendum on. But I believe you could hold an advisory referendum next May when some of us might be on the ballot again, and let the community speak once for all. Election day.
Yes, sir.
Could we find out if we could have an advisory referendum? I mean, of course, advisory means you're not bound by it, but it would certainly answer the question once and for all. What did the voters of Blackstone want?
I think about a year ago, Eric brought that up and ran it by Chessie. I don't know if it was an advisory referendum.
I don't want a binding. I
brought it up last election, so it was 3 years ago,
But
because I
knew
knew the first 4 years I was on it was such a hot topic, and it's like, well, we always are sitting here and we hear this one say this, we hear that, so we never hear, and we never get anywhere because we hear 5 people say they're for it, 5 people say they're against it. So then what do you do?
Dog confinement in 1983 was a advisory referendum, and dog confinement passed by a margin of 4-1 in town, and the council acted accordingly. And like I said, that may be a cop-out, but I do worry about this in a survey as one who votes for my favorite MVPs and all that online. All right, let's get the copy machine. Let's make some copies. I mean, it's unscientific.
I would think the surveys would have to be numbered, and that's the only way they could be done legitimately.
And then how you gonna do is fair. If I got 3 people living in my household, I got 1 survey.
Peanuts ahead the household. Peanuts gonna fill that out.
But how we gonna make it fair on that? Then all about the wording. It might be benefiting to the Army than what a community center will do.
Correct.
So nobody can be satisfied in this way with that survey. You got to come with a way. We got to put it on the ballot for the vote.
I've been asking.
Well, and to me, the question is this. To me, I mean, like, so we can argue nuances all day long, and I don't think the council's as split as y'all think they were on the committee. What committee's going to do the survey? Should the town of Blackstone spend upwards of $2.5 million renovating the Armory? That's the question that should be on the advisory ballot, if I was writing it. Should the town of Blackstone spend up to $2.5 million renovating the Armory?
Do you remember looking up whether we can do that?
But how would a new one come in effect?
What do you mean?
Because, see, this survey thing took a totally left-hand turn to what me, Philip, and all this were talking about.
Well, you can break this thing down into community center, computer labs, wedding receptions, whatever, but I think the main question, this council, we'd all love to know. I'd love to know, and I've lived it my whole life. I couldn't tell you. I think it's probably going to be close to 50-50 or maybe even against. But I'm willing to, I always trust the people. Look, I may be wrong with this, folks. I've been naive enough to think that January 19, 2019, we take the money and do something for everybody. I know you have a different perspective, but I'm not saying I'm right. That's just my belief. I'm willing to listen to people. And if we can put it on an advisory referendum in May, when some or all of us are also on the ballot, we may have an army election. I mean, seriously. I mean, I stand on my opinion, but I respect everybody here.
Well, I'd like for us to proceed with the survey as we have already voted on, but I mean, I would like to hear Tessie look into the referendum deal.
Because we've got time.
The advisory is not binding, which I guess I was asking you about binding a few years ago.
And also, here's the thing, the bond secure money, and Mr. Green and I have discussed this before, I've been counting that money for a long time. Mr. Green and Mr. Monk, you both have said, look, it's a 10-year lease, which is about to expire, with 2 5-year renewals. So there's no guarantee. I think they're going to be here for the long haul, but there's never a guarantee. But I think the survey's fine. But I think if we find out, if I found out we can put it on the ballot, I think the survey's meaningless. I would trust that. I would trust election day, where everybody knows when to vote. Then well, these look like copies. Whose handwriting is that? That looks like Peanut's handwriting 3 times. Not you.
I'm saying. You know? I mean, but it's no fair way in that.
Right. Ms. Candy Early has a point.
You would do that.
How is the survey gonna work?
Well, the survey would be worded with approval,
Are you gonna bring it to me?
hand delivered to every structure in Blackstone.
Hold on. I don't get home till 6 o'clock at night. Is Philip gonna come by my house at 6:15?
No.
Mailbox.
I'm not gonna put it in your mailbox, but I'll put it at your door.
Yeah.
But how are you gonna know who fills it out and turns it back in, that that's who it is? Are
That-
you gonna have the addresses stamped on it?
Great questions. That's why put me down for the advisory referendum if it's somebody possible.
It costs a lot of money, and then how are you gonna know that I filled it out and turned it in?
Well, that's the thing, because the advisory referendum wouldn't cost any extra money, because the county of Nottaway is going to have municipal elections on May the 8th, 2018. And that's it, you tack it onto the ballot for Blackstone.
Some of that survey will get in file 13.
Sure. Well,
I just don't see how you could possibly, you're gonna put it in my door, anybody can take it off of my door. But I've never had.
it's certainly not scientific.
No,
It's
it's
certainly
not.
not scientific.
No, it's
Certainly.
not.
We all
No
agree on that.
scientific way of
We all
doing
agree.
it.
Trash can.
Vicky Buckley.
And that's the whole thing, is that, let's be realistic. Do you know how many times stuff comes in the mail? And I can tell you, it happens at my house all the time. If Michael gets it, it'll sit in the mailbox for 10 days.
Yeah.
And then it'll come in, and it'll be at the bottom of a pile. So the problem with the survey is to look at it, and if you happen to get a number of people who vote against it, and then they come back and, oh, well, it's against, well, how do you know, I mean, unless the entire population of this community votes, it's not a fair, it's not accurate data.
But
It just isn't.
But if you publicize on that, and again, I agree with everything y'all are saying, if you let folks know what's coming, the passionate ones, most of whom in this room, the small number you get back may be a very revealing number that shows there is a lack of passion for the Armory.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if you get the survey and you don't get the answer that you want, you know it's going in the trash can.
Well, that's why, like I said, I'm at the point now, folks. I think the advisory referendum, and I pray it's available. That will answer. Everyone. I've talked to everyone y'all here one-on-one. I've told you what I think the survey would do on a certain day. It changes. There's Armory fatigue in this room, in this community. I don't think there's a lot of Armory anger. I know that you have been very passionate against it, and I respect your opinion. But I am seeing the decay of the zeal and the passion. Not among the Armory that's here. My goodness, the good stuff y'all done. Y'all raised over half. I mean, the group in this town that has had a goal and raised over half of it. So can't lose sight of that fact. We have collected money from people who do from all over. But can we agree to, if you want, we can prepare a survey for wording and possible delivery. We can do that right now, no cost any money. But let's find out about that advisory referendum.
I would. Public hearing is the most. If somebody really has a passion one way or another, they need to get out.
But Mr. Green has said, and again, I know people that match his criteria. Billy, I'm tired. I ain't coming out here on Monday night. And I agree. That means they may not care, but they also might be an Armory supporter or Armory opponent, and they. A
lot of people work at night.
It just.
They're fatigued.
We got nothing to lose with advisory referendum.
I will tell you this, I had twins, as most people know, and the man said, "Do you want to cut the cord?" And I said, "No, that's what I'm paying you for." So I have a lot of people tell me that.
Right.
I don't want to come to the podium. That's why I voted you to do it. And in my opinion, no disrespect to you, sir, but they have the same right to my ear as you do. Right. So
is anyone here tonight?
I would suggest that this is that we should find out before we take the time, burden this committee. I'm gonna cancel this meeting until we hear from the attorney on the 16th, I believe we meet.
Sounds good, yes.
At that time, if we're able to have some sort of referendum, then I'll offer a motion that we do that.
Okay.
If we're not able to, I would ask the committee to reconvene and
Survey.
and use a survey. And Mr. Johnson made a great point during one of the two committee meetings where we polled, the high school or upper school or whatever you want to call it, students, and to get something from them at both high schools. And I think that's something that should be looked at.
Right.
It shouldn't carry the weight of Mr. Johnson's vote or Mr. Nash's
Kids
vote.
want kids will want. If I was a kid, I want everything. I want rock concerts there every Friday.
But I do like the idea. I do like the idea.
Mr. Green has the floor.
I do like the idea. If we could do a referendum once and for all, as you said, a simple question: Are you willing to invest town funds from wherever they come, up to a certain amount of money? Yes
To renovate the Armory.
And that's the question that I would like to know.
Right. And does anyone here tonight think that an advisory referendum is just crazy? Does anyone here tonight think it's just crazy? I know it's a little bit of us delegating our authority a little bit, Does anybody here just think it's terrible? But I do see some anxiety about the survey, so
I wish 4 years ago we had done this.
Well, hey.
So you're canceling October 10th, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
October 10th is canceled.
The survey is on hold pending a ruling or information from our town attorney.
I did it in
On
principle.
the 16th.
Thank you, Ms.
I
Johnson.
would like a brief from the town attorney on the 16th, and I'd like it to be on the agenda, please.
Very good. All right. Listen, thank y'all. Thank you very much. And I want to especially thank the Armory volunteers because we do lose sight of the fact that y'all raised about $60,000 at a $100,000 goal, and that ain't easy in this economy, especially in Blackstone, Virginia. Yes, Ms. Bonnell, before we move on.
I just want to make a point, kind of piggybacking off again on what Mr. Nash said, because you just said it, you just threw another figure out for the armory. So now I've heard 2.5, 2.25, 1.85, 1.6. It is going to be impossible to get a number to put on a referendum that's accurate. So now we're talking about up to, so we're going to scare people by putting an inflated amount in there. I think we need to really consider the wording and what we're going to put in there.
Right.
Yeah, I don't like where that's.
Well, here's why I threw that number out, because I've looked at the estimates, and I would rather look the voter in the eye and err on the high side than have it come back. If the question is 1.5, and they said, Billy, I voted for 1.5, and y'all spending 2.2.
Well, I'm okay with, a cushion is fine. We all have a cushion. I get something done at my house, there's a little cushion, here's your estimate. You might go 15% over. I get that. But there is a pretty big difference between some of these quotes that we have, so I think that warrants a discussion.
It does, but here's the bottom line, folks. If y'all want to boo me out of here, you can. The issue for most people, the ones that are passionate about it, it's not give me the exact dollar figure, Billy. It's do we do it or not? This town has spent millions doing things without a poll. So I think if we have I would rather it's going to be it's going to be $2 million. There's not anybody I've talked to that says it's not going to be $2 million. I would just say 2.5 for fluff because I know when they built a new high school, they built an $8 million high school, but we forgot the furnishings. But points are well taken, but we can't get bogged down. Let's be precise with the survey. I think, but your points are all well made.
The only thing I can go by is the Armory had an architect that was, in my opinion, I don't know about you guys, but he seemed to be very knowledgeable and had himself together. And the irony of it is, and the sad part of what's going on in this country and in our Commonwealth, is that we did the project with tax help, it was 1.8 million. If we did the project without the help, it's 1.8 million. That's the travesty of what we're dealing with in this country. So why couldn't we get $900,000 worth of help? And I can tell you, I can make a $900,000 Armory fly. You know what I'm saying? But the true figure is 1.8 million from an expert, until you bring another expert up here. These were Phillips' calculations when he was called an idiot in these chambers. That is the number. Now, if you want to, I think his abundance of caution, there's something for that. But the true matter of it's $2 million, and that's what we need to say. and we need to say, do you or do you not want to do it? The fact of the matter of, if you want to do it, we now have a way we can do it. Or do you want to bank this money and you as residents aren't facing tax increases for up to 25 years? Do we want to tackle our debt? Do we want to take this money in 5 years from now, decide that we have our core services built up, and do we take on a community center? These are the questions that we need to ask. And so, but Mayor Colburn, you're absolutely right. This has been, as you would say, ad nauseum. and it's just to the point that elected officials need to stop punting an issue